Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce 3 different things. 1, the neighbor dogs have piped down enough that I can get this recorded. 2, it takes exactly 63 days for me to grow a mustache long enough to curl the tips. I could not curl it on the 62nd day. On the 63rd, I could. And 3rd, we are nearly completed with our award-winning series of the AR-15 component selection. We got everything done but the sights and the bolt carrier group. So we've got, let me think, I have 5 different bolt carriers, 4 unique designs, and 2 identical ones in different stages of use, and we're going to have a look at that, see what the pros and cons of the different finishes and configurations are, and then we will be 1 chapter away from completing AR-15 component selection. Oh, and trusted longtime associate Jameson has made a reasonable request that there be more cats in this video. Apparently there were none in the last, so we'll try and accommodate him because we're reasonable people, right? Moving on. So before things get out of hand and I start making a lot of assumptions about what you guys do and do not know, we're going to pop the hood on this thing and show you where the bolt carrier group resides. There you have it. Here's a quick look for you guys. We've got the carrier itself. This is the gas key. That's going to take the gas vented off when you fire a bullet. And then that's going to actuate this piston here, which is the bolt itself. Shoots the bolt back into the buffer tube, pops it forward. If you see, there's our bolt face, and these 2 lugs, depending on which side the round's on, will strip a round off the magazine. Once the bullet's into the chamber and level, that's gonna get the rim underneath the extractor, and then we got our ejector there. Pops it in, you fire another round, the cycle continues, and the ejector there, which is spring loaded, is gonna pop it out. And to keep things interesting, we've got some slow-mo footage so you can see that in action. So now that we understand the basics of how a bolt carrier and bolt work in conjunction with your rifle, we can get onto the serious business of talking about the different variations that you might need to consider. We'll have this problem licked in no time. It's safe to say that I'll be patting myself on the back for that one for some time to come. Up top, in front of us we see the array of bolt carrier groups that I have here at the Estates. Please try not to be blinded by the ones in the back. The first 2 that we have are both mil-spec. They're both phosphate. We talked about phosphate with the barrels, and it's not necessarily a preservative, but it is a treatment that holds oil nicely. You can see how nice and glossy they are. And that's going to be a corrosion preventative. During my time in the National Guard, we used almost exclusively phosphate bolt carriers. We actually had Armalite M16A1s that had chrome carriers, and I thought they were flashy. The guys who had them seemed to like them because they were easier to clean. So whenever I take these things out for a spin, I've always got the bolts well lubricated, probably a little more than some people would recommend, but I find it's easier to clean up afterwards. You can just wipe it down rather than having to get in there and scrape the hardened carbon off. So that's my method. Obviously you all may have your own. But as far as inexpensive bolt carrier groups go, these are some of the cheapest. They're certainly available. So here's an interesting comparison. Both of these have staked gas keys, identical stakings. They're both shot peened. They are MPI and HPT tested. But one of these costs $50 and the other one costs $150. Can you guess why? because this one has a little C on it. It's an actual Colt bolt carrier group. It doesn't even have the picture of the pony, but you're still paying extra for that C. The other one's a Palmetto one, and I've put quite a few rounds through it, and it's worked perfectly acceptably. So these two are identical. They're nickel boron coated, and they're skeletonized to cut down the weight. Nickel boron's a finish you'd put on, sort of like chrome. And the premise is that it's naturally slick and harder than chrome. Some folks are going to find it hard to resist going with these things because they've got the nice silver finish. Although this one has probably 400 rounds through it, and you can see it's starting to get a little stained up. It's not showing up really great on this camera angle. You can see it much more easily on the inside of the bolt face. That would probably be your closest comparison there. This top one's actually unfired at this point. So we know why we would want to go with nickel boron, because of the inherent slickness and stylishness. The skeletonized feature is actually to reduce the mass of the bolt, and you can get a faster cyclic rate with that. So if you're pulling the trigger incredibly fast, say competition shooting, something like that, running a drill, you may have the hammer, as you pull the trigger, follow the bolt home before it's fully seated. And that's going to give you a dead trigger, and you'll have to eject the round in there. And then, of course, if the slickness portion is to be believed, you're going to have more lubricity, and your bolt's going to actuate faster that way as well. And these things, I think, were 90 bucks on Brownells, and I could have got a Phosphate one for the same cost, but I'll admit it, style matters. I want it to look flashy. And if you're curious, this ring down here is what would trip an auto sear. So if you happen to be one of the lucky individuals, it has a full auto. You can use these with that, and also with the Phosphate Echo triggers, you need an auto sear to get the second shot off. But this first one's worked well for me. I haven't had any problems with it, and I look forward to seeing how fast I can get the cyclic rate going on it, and I can try out my Jerry Michalik fingers. That'll be fun. That can be one of my adventure projects while I'm in Wisconsin on vacation. So that brings us to this goofy thing. This guy's kind of an oddity. I picked them up last month. I've had my eye on one of these things for a long time, and it is a 22 conversion kit. 22 long rifle and 223 are close enough in bullet diameter that you can shoot a 22 down in 223 barrel. So if you look closely at this thing, you insert it just like a regular bolt carrier, and if you check the end of this tube, it will headspace just like a 223 shell will. It's got the same profile. And then rather than the entire package going back and forth, the charging handle goes up there, and it's a blowback design, similar to a lot of your smaller 380 and smaller pistols. Second chamber feed ramp down there, and bolt face and extractor over here. And of course it comes with its own proprietary magazines. And so far I have 150 rounds through this thing. We'll talk about this guy in his own review. He's been an interesting purchase, and I've talked to CMMG, they're the manufacturers of it, about a few quirks of it. It's imperfect, but as far as having a inexpensive way to fire 22, and it's certainly sufficiently accurate for close range, although there are point of impact shifts, but we'll discuss that at a future juncture. This guy with 3 magazines ran me 175 bucks. Okay guys, don't jump all over me. I know this is a Glock 26. I know it doesn't take 3-inch slugs for its ammunition, but what it does have is a Nitride slide. I wanted to bring out a nitride finish so you guys could have a look at it and get an idea of what it looks like. It's a little shinier than the phosphate. You can see this one's got a sheen of oil on it, but that's really unnecessary. It's very corrosion resistant and extremely resistant to abrasions and scratches as well. You can see there's no wear whatsoever on this from the pocket holster that I've been using with it. And from my experience, gunpowder residue just wipes right off it and doesn't get solidified like you see it on phosphate or nickel boron bolt carriers. Alright folks, thanks for coming along. We had a good look at bolt carrier groups and you know, a broad introduction to them. Certainly imperfect, but I think that's going to give you a good jumping off point to do a little more research on your own. To the question, would I buy them again? I think if I was going to get a bolt carrier group, I would probably just go with a Nitride at this point. I've gotten solid reviews on the ability to clean them. They're common enough that they're low cost at this point, and I don't need to be flashy anymore. I think we got our sufficient cat footage, and she's ready to get up, so I think we're done. So next week we're going to have a look at this CMMG bolt carrier group 22 conversion kit. A little more in depth. I've got some targets so we can see what kind of groupings I was able to get, and we'll compare it with 223 and the conversion kit out of the same gun. And then I'll talk a little bit about my journey with this thing and CMMG customer service. And if this is all you hear about that, don't worry, they were great. We got it all worked out. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Well, there you go. We did it. Knocked it out of the park. High five. Ow! Fuck. Me too, buddy. Me too.